Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Wally Olson, welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. Great to have you back again. How are you?
Very, very good.
Good. We're going to visit about a few things today. I want to mention that we are recording this in December of 24, so the market is, as you remember it, market's gotten a little crazy here in the last of the year. But I want to talk about two important concepts today. And the first one is the importance of periodically valuing your inventory, mostly as an awareness exercise. So whether you are a stock operator who plans to trade, stuff through a sale barn every month, or whether you are a cow-calf operator who you would never buy an animal in a sale barn and maybe even never sell an animal in a sale barn, I want to ask you about the importance of valuing inventory. So Wally, do you want to talk a little about that?
Yes, I would love to talk about that. And one thing on valuing your inventory, and, John talked about it doing periodically, and to me, you really need to do it almost daily. So you understand what's happening in your inventory, because just like in the last few months or whatever, cows basically have went from a couple of $1,000s to $3,500 or even
a couple more $1,000, right? They have gone up.
So you need to be looking at what you have in inventory, and you need to be selling what's overvalued and keeping what's undervalued. And you do not ever, the cow-calf people that have your closed herds and all of that, you never have to go to a sale barn and buy anything. You just need to manage your inventory for the most gain that you can, because, and this is a word that nobody really addresses, that in the cow-calf business, you have a word appreciation. And most of the time, you got to do the relationships, but most of the time, it is the weaned heifer calf is the most undervalued animal in your herd. And you can keep her, and she can turn into the most overvalued animal in your herd as a bred cow, a young bred cow. But the only way you're going to know this is to do the relationships, understand their value, and go forth. And you're going to have to develop the ability to sell some young cows. Like I said, you just need to do it. Capitalizing on your inventory value is almost worth more than what your steer calves sell for. Would you agree with that, John?
Totally agree with that. And we see that over and over and over again.
Yes, it's an amazing thing, and the weekend that I spent with Bud Williams, and I was a stocker guy, and I didn't want to have to deal with any cows, and on and on and on. When he got done with me that week, I understood how to make money in the cow business, and it has been very good. And one thing you need to understand, that I'm not interested in profit as much as I am creating wealth. And depending on who you are and how you measure that, I am most interested in after-tax dollars. And after-tax dollars is the best way to exit money out of your ranching business is through a overvalued cow that you have raised, because you can capital gains her and you do not have to pay ordinary income. Here we go. I got to burr up my butt about this one. Here we go. Is that everybody talks about how you should have terminal cross calves and stuff. Well, if you have a terminal cross herd, everything you sell is an ordinary income. So consequently, if you have got your costs down where you are profitable, taxes become one of your biggest expenses. And if you can reduce your tax rate from, say, 25% down to 15% via capital gains, that is a big deal. And the other thing is, if you're an independent rancher and you don't have to pay self-employment tax, which in our case is 15%. Now, the thing you got to understand is about retirement. I worked on a ranch, managed a ranch for 25 years. And I paid Social Security. They paid half and I paid half. And, my check every month is a very nice check. So you need to understand that.
We generally advise people to make sure they have their 40 quarters of Social Security eligibility. We might debate about what the value of that is, but the retirement check is one thing that's nice. The one I get more interested in is the disability check. We have talked about that in other episodes. But the 15.3% savings on that income is pretty important when you get looking at how much tax you actually do pay. And let's emphasize a couple of points. We encourage our customers to look at their inventory value every month. You're saying every day. I don't disagree with you at all. But I want to make sure that we look at our inventory value as an awareness exercise first. That the most important thing we have to do is create that awareness in ourselves of what the inventory value is. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to take an action, right? And of course, inaction is as big a decision as action, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to buy or sell cows every day. It just means that we need to be aware of it. And I think that's a part where it is really easy for us to get very involved in the whitby or the working in the business, right? We're busy feeding, we're busy haying, we're busy irrigating, maybe we're busy chasing kids basketball or doing something else. But the swings that happen in the market, like have happened really in the last 60 days, can be things just like Wally said that drive profitability far beyond getting an extra 25 pounds of gain on a calf. The run up in the cow market that's happened in the last 60 days has provided a wonderful opportunity. And the market right now is showing that the difference between a heifer calf and a bred cow or bred heifer spread is really, really high. So the market is saying there's a lot of rewards for converting a heifer into a bred heifer into a bred cow. Is that fair?
That's fair, very fair. And one thing more important, the reason that you need to do this monthly or whatever is, and going back to spending time with Bud Williams, is you got to be prepared to do this. You're not just going to get up one day and say, well, God, these cows are overvalued. You need to prepare and think it through many times before you are ready to implement this.
Part of what we're doing is practicing, you're saying. We're getting reps in. So by doing it every month, we're getting practice at it.
That's correct.
Yeah, I would second that. I think what we see in our customers, especially when it comes to actually determining the value of their cattle, it does take practice because the first few times were a little awkward. And then as you do it more and more, about the time we've had a customer for a year and a half, they are very comfortable with sort of determining their own inventory value. So that's a really good point. I appreciate you making that.
And one thing is, if you are questioning valuing your inventory, what you need to do is, if you are involved with sale barn, get with the sale barn manager or owner and explain what you're wanting to do and have him come out and have him help you through how to value animals.
Yep. I've had lots of people that are willing to help me do that. There are lots of great resources, people we can call on and say, what do you think? Help me describe these cows. So that's good. All right. The second thing I want to dive into today with regards to inventory valuation is we've talked a little with Walter in our monthly webinar. We've talked a few times, I think, on this podcast about the power of retained earnings. And one of the things we really want to look at, creating retained earnings in our business by seeing that appreciation and then capturing it. It is not enough to just let appreciation happen passively and then do nothing about it. At a certain point, to sort of lock down those inventory value gains, we sell something, convert it to cash, and then reinvest that cash. And in some cases, we may hold a part of that cash and reinvest part of the cash. But as we are looking at the market going up and down, one of the things that's very important is that as the market is going down, when we can make profitable trades or trades with good cash flow, that we are in fact setting some of that cash off to the side. Is that correct?
That is very much correct.
So walk us through a scenario where we would be thinking about something like that.
Right now, there is close to, depending on the value of the cow, there is close to $2,000 spread between the bred cow and the heifer calf.
And so just to give some reference, we've got heifer calves that are selling for, let's say, about $1,300. Is that fair?
$1,300 or $1,400.
And we are seeing bred cows that are currently trading for even more than that.
Yep.
But certainly in that range, $2,000 above that. So let's say $3,000 plus. as a range. So when we sell a bred cow and we buy back a heifer, and then we add her cost to get her back to a bred cow. So let's call that the cost of running her for a year. So let's use $700.
Well, if you bought her for $1,300 and put $700 with you, you got $2,000 in your bred heifer, and you have $1,300 in cash left over, correct?
After you have paid the cost of getting her back. Yeah.
So, then you have to decide what you want to do with that $1,300 in cash.
Meaning you could buy another heifer, you could keep it in a savings account.
You could buy another heifer, or you could, save half of it and invest the other half in buying another heifer or doing something. And one thing you need to be very cautious here is about reinvesting these earnings back in the business. And that is not mean go buy a new $80,000 or $90,000 pickup. This is reinvesting in assets that create more cash flow.
And when we reinvest, that's when we create compound growth, right? Because that's when we earn $1 and then we use that $1 to earn additional income. That is the math of our money that we made making money. So first we start with our money, and our money makes money. And then the money that our money made makes money. And that is literally the process of compounding. And what we see in that, again, is if we ever look at an exponential growth curve, it has a long, flat tail at the beginning. And it doesn't look like very much is happening. But when we continue to reinvest those earnings, using compound growth, eventually we hit an inflection point where that curve changes from a long, apparently kind of flat curve to a fairly steep upward curve. And that's the point we're working towards as we reinvest money in our business. The more of the money we made that is making money, at some point that money is bigger than the money that we have in there. And that's when compound growth really propels us to a new place. When we talk about the difference between building, profit and building wealth, those are two sort of sequential things where we have to start with a profitable business that has a good return. As we reinvest, that's the place where we take those profits and we put them back into a very profitable business. That's where compound growth can really take us to a new level. When we look in small business especially, but also to a lesser degree in investing, small business, because of its often very high rates of return or high relative to investing, that's where we see companies that build fantastic wealth for their owners and their shareholders. All right, what else do we need to talk about?
One thing also, you need to be on reinvesting in your business. You need to be prepared. And I'm talking about the cattle business. I talk about appreciation and depreciation in a herd. Well, we have inflation and deflation.
Yep.
Which we're in a very inflating period right now. And, if you would have had your ducks in a row and had the cash to do it, retained earnings to do it, and invested and then just run this market up and then capture the value, it's tremendous how much you can. You have quantum leaps in wealth, but you got to prepare for doing that.
Yeah. And we prepare for the fact that we do not know the future. Right? We never know what's around the corner.
That's correct.
Very good. All right, let's wrap this up. What else do we want to visit about with regards to knowing your inventory value and reinvesting retained earnings?
I would say we covered it pretty well.
Sounds great. Wally, good to see you. Look forward to the next time. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for listening to the Ranchonomics podcast. One other thing I'd like to mention right now, Wally and I are both peripherally involved with the His Cavy Foundation, and they have recently run an online auction. If you are looking for a place at the end of the year to donate money, they have a bunch of people that could use help right now that they are working hard to try to serve. So look up hiscavyfoundation.org on the internet, see what might appeal to you there. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.